All right, so we are going to kick this off. Welcome to today's weekly live show on securing corporate yoga. Now, this is one of probably the most consistently asked about topic. So we're going to go into pricing proposals, networking, and LinkedIn as we interview Shruti, who will introduce herself in a second. But if you're new here, my name is Laura Green. I am a yoga teacher based in Southampton. I've been teaching for 12 years. I am a teacher training. I run a 200-hour course and 150-hour advanced teacher training, and a business mentor for yoga teachers. Supporting teachers through their journey, I notice how many teachers really at some point feel very called and drawn into wanting to do corporate yoga. And in the 12 years I've been teaching, I was thinking about this morning, I have worked for insurance companies, law firms, engineering companies. I've worked for BBC and even taught for a Premier League football club. So I've certainly done my fair share of corporate yoga, but only really one of those, the engineering company, was particularly kind of worthwhile. I stayed with them for about 8 years. The rest of them weren't really. So I've always thought that for me, corporate yoga didn't work. But you know why that is? It's if something works for you or doesn't work for you, it all comes to how you set it up. How you set it up, how you went about it. It's like when people tell me that flyering doesn't work. Flyering doesn't work because your flyer wasn't very good and you didn't flyer on a Sunday. Get the right flyer, it works. If you say corporate yoga doesn't work, it's not a good use of time, it's because you didn't set it up correctly in the first place. So everything works if you go about it in the right way. And that is why I have an expert to come help us work through this today, so that if you are drawn to do corporate yoga, you can set it up correctly from the beginning so that it is worthwhile for you. So over to Shruti, my love. I would love you to introduce yourself.
Hi, Laura. Thank you very much for that very insightful intro and your background as well, and the warm welcome. So my name is Shruti Srivastava. I'm founder of Yoga Map, which is an online booking platform for yoga teachers to connect with yoga students. And in 2021, we launched our workplace wellness programs. I really like what you were saying about the process side of things, getting yourself set up, because launching even the website page took time because it had to be right. But in terms of my background, I've worked in the corporate background as corporate world as well since 2006, or maybe a little before that. So I worked in recruitment for lots of FTSE 100 companies, and then I moved into the legal sector. So worked both as a headhunter on agency side, and then more recently as head of recruitment for global law firms. I worked for a couple of law firms. So really seeing from the inside of an HR department what it's like to procure services for an organization, which I think is one of the points we'll talk about today, because I think how you present yourself as a yoga teacher or any other kind of service provider to an organization is really important.
Great, thank you. And it's such an amazing blend of experience that you have there, from actually being in the job, being a yoga teacher. I know you've just got back from running some amazing looking retreats in Lulworth Cove, then from the side of running a booking platform, then from the side of delivering workplace wellness, and as you said, from that inside of actually procuring it and knowing what companies are looking for. So I know we're kind of, let's jiggle the order around on, let's start with, if you have just thought, I would love to do some corporate yoga, how do people, I guess we're coming in on the networking to begin with, how do people go about going, now let me find a company?
No, that's a good starting point. And I think, obviously there are many different ways that you could go about that, but I think it's really about having a plan And even before the plan, I think it's also just taking a step back. As yoga teachers, we know what we do, we know what we love, we know why we're in it. We may have a particular niche or particular audience, but I think with corporate yoga, it's just taking a step back and thinking, why do I want to partner with an organization in the first place? And then if I am clear on that, what kind of organization do I want to partner with? So that would be my starting point, really.
I don't think anybody starts there.
Right. Okay.
Don't think any of us even think that. Like, why? I don't know. And I think there's a sense of, oh, well, it maybe, because the yoga teachers are always struggling with self-confidence and credibility. Oh, corporate yoga sounds credible. It sounds like it must be good. I don't actually think people think, why? Of all the ways I could teach yoga, why? And why do you want to do workplace wellness?
Yeah, and I was just going to come on to that. For me, it was really clear. I experienced burnout in my, in my previous roles. I used to work really hard, 70-hour weeks. My one solace was yoga. If I wasn't doing yoga, I was working. If I wasn't working, I was doing yoga. So now I've unraveled myself from the city and I work full time in the wellness industry. I feel really strongly and passionate about sharing what I've learned with others. And I would add to that, which again, we'll come on onto a moment when you think about the process. For me, I've worked in HR, in recruitment, and in the legal sector broadly for 15 years. So the people I most resonate with are recruiters, HR professionals, lawyers. So it's really natural for me to present myself as someone who does workplace wellness in those particular sectors. I understand what it means to work towards chargeable hours. I understand what it means when your client says, please do this. The answer is not no. So I think, understanding even practically then what that means for a client as to when the yoga class will take place or what kind of workplace wellness initiative will suit them is really important.
Mm-hmm. And on the why, and I imagine I'm going to come onto this as well, but it's going to be just as important, and something yoga teachers don't do is thinking of why for the company. Things like, what is your sick leave? How many people are sick because of back injury? How many people are sick because of stress? Understanding in the bare bones, what's going to open the purse strings?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's two ways you can look at that. One is starting from the top, what is the overall corporate mission of that organization? What's their, you can find that online. What's their sort of headline? What are they trying to achieve? And then within that feeds the people strategy. So the HR strategy is always led by the overall organization strategy. And now in 2021, I would be surprised if there are the big FTSE 100, the big, the major corporations most of them have a wellness strategy which feeds into that. And they will have themselves done, employee surveys, 360 feedback to understand what the morale in the team is, or the department or the organization is like. So if you can start that way round, sometimes hard, obviously speaking to people who maybe have that information, that's really useful because you can tailor your own proposal and I guess pricing strategy in line with that. I guess the other way, as you say, is really understanding, there's really great sources like Glassdoor, which talk about employees themselves provide feedback on what it's like to work in that organization. You might get some snippets of information there. You can look at surveys from Gartner or HR magazines to understand what the mood is in that broader sector, let's say. So really understanding what the pinch points are from both perspectives to help you get your pitch right. So that kind of then, takes me on to really then what do you do? And I guess this is, and Laura, we've spoken about both our backgrounds. This really is when, your sort of sales skills come in, and I'd simply say create a list of all the organizations. It might be locally. I know a lot of people aren't based in London. We're very blessed here with being very centrally located for a lot of organizations, but in this day and age it doesn't matter. I've spoken to yoga teachers based in Leeds who are teaching lawyers in London. With online wellness now, you can be anywhere in the world, but I think getting your target audience right, and therefore what you're going to offer them right, will stand you in good stead.
And I think, even here in Southampton, we have many mid-level law firms, we have larger law firms, we have head offices like B&Q head offices down here, Carnival head offices down here, but also to your smaller organizations that are just sort of 10 people plus as well. Yeah. And that's such a professional way to think about it from that very beginning, of what's their why. And I just want to dial in from my background a little bit, because I know we're very similar, on the spreadsheet. Okay, yes. Just if you haven't thought of creating a spreadsheet before on something like this, I would say, either, as Shruti said, think about the companies in your area you want to work with, or actually just start a mile radius from where you live. What are all the organizations, Shruti, would you say, with people with like 10, 15 employees plus, or would you say like 50 employees plus?
Yeah, I mean, I think to have a corporate class of 10 employees, that's great, as much as it is 20, 30, 40. So yeah. I think the number is almost less important. I think it's also thinking, we talked about confidence of yoga teachers. If I could pick up on one similarity, I would say, at the end of the day, this is like recruitment. Why do I want to work with this or partner with this organization? Similarly, why do they want to hire me as their yoga teacher? Yeah. So if you were looking for a job, you would cast your net quite wide. So similarly, I would say, actually is what they're doing interesting to me? The team at B&Q, you've got head office, maybe there's guys working out in the warehouses, they've got bad backs. Let me just try and think of a narrative that links to who I am. So I think the size doesn't matter, but I certainly think how you can then be credible in that space is really important.
Yeah. So on our spreadsheet, we've got what are the companies in your area, cast that net wide. Would you make then like the second column, if you can find anything like that corporate mission, anything like that, then let's try and get some names in there. Do they have an HR department? If so, who is the contact? If they don't have an HR department, is it an office manager? Who is looking after staff? Phone number, email, web address in our next columns along.
For sure,
And you contacted them, how you contacted them, when you followed up.
Yeah, and I think, have your RAG rating, have a sort of red, amber, green system, decide who your priority 10 are. I mean, some stats that I would go by, when I worked in recruitment, I would always have, liken it to 10 balls juggling. So I would say if you've got 10 organizations on there, you're likely to get success with one. If you've got 10 names on there in one organization, again, likely you'll get through to having a conversation with one. At any stage, consider this process of securing a corporate client, that as long as you've got 10 balls juggling, you're likely to have on land, and therefore don't be disheartened if 9 people say no, because the 10th one is likely to be interested in what you have to say. And I would also add in there, make a list of friends, family, champions, people that are your ambassadors, your current students, and just say to them, oh, look, you might have seen on my website, I've got a workplace wellness initiative. I'd love to do this. Is there anyone you can put me in touch with? And
because we've gone straight in on cold, actually. We've gone straight into talking about cold. But actually, the first step is that say to your students, where do you work? Would you like to get your company involved? I could come into your workplace and maybe incentivize the students, saying, if we can bring yoga into your workplace, I'd love to give you a 5-class pass to attend my own classes, or a 1-to-1, or make it even into a little competition, because your champions are going to be so much easier than starting cold, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And just being mindful of the Anti-Bribery Act with some organisations, because
yes, I always forget about that.
Take them for a coffee. But I think I would say start friends and family. Second, think about your target audience, your why, and then third, think about credibility in the space. So that might be because you're based in the heart of Southampton, or it might be the particular sector. And I know we're going to talk about LinkedIn as well later, and credibility and LinkedIn, to my mind, go really well together in this area.
So you've got a name from a student or from some kind of cold digging around. What is the next step, would you say, is the best next step? I mean, I'm a phone girl. I'm going to be straight on picking up that phone. And if the phone doesn't work, then I'll send an email. But I know that's very intimidating to go the other way. Send an introductory email, follow up the phone call. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think yeah, you make two very good suggestions there, Laura. And I think it really depends on what you're like as a person, and not to draw upon those of us that are maybe a bit more extrovert or a bit more introvert. But I think if you want to play around with this to begin with, or maybe you've got a name of 100 organizations, why not think about what your LinkedIn profile looks like? That is the go-to place, to my mind, for corporate connections.
So
So
if we
why not?
park LinkedIn in one section, so I know some people just
Yeah.
won't understand it at all.
Okay, no
But if
worries.
we're like without LinkedIn, it's just
Yeah.
saying my student's gone. Do you know what, Laura? I think my company would be interested in some yoga, maybe. And this is the lady who runs HR. And
Yeah.
maybe you want to get in touch with her if I was just
Yeah,
going to do
fine.
that kind
Okay,
of
so
outreach.
yeah, so let's say you've got a bit of a warmer lead, as it were. So I think, yeah, no harm in dropping a line and just saying, hi, so and so recommended. If possible, if that person has a good relationship with them, I know it's a very small detail, but maybe they're happy for you to copy them in, you're more likely to get a response, because the HR person or the office manager may be a bit more accountable to that person. And yeah, just drop them a line and say, hey, new year, just looking to see what you're up to this year. Maybe start with something a bit more relevant to that particular sector, a particular statistic, not to get too sort of formal about it, but I know well-being at work is a massive there's a massive focus on that in your industry at the moment. Or I read this particular article, would love to have a chat with you. This is what I'm doing. I run really successful sessions and I'd love to bring them, into the workplace. How you fix for a chat. And then I think, update your spreadsheet. Don't worry if they don't reply. Obviously, if you've got 10 on the go, you're sort of hedging your bets a little bit. And then a follow-up. And then I think if, and again, this is if you're not feeling comfortable just picking up the phone straight away, maybe on week 3, then maybe give them a call. And, if someone says no, I'd always say it's a no for now, because, 3 months, 6 months down the line, or actually someone else might put you in touch and they may say, oh yeah, we were chatting then. And people have a really short-term memory when it comes to business development, people reaching out for these sorts of reasons. So I think you're absolutely fine to just keep them on your mind. If B&Q is always going to be in one of your target customers, then just see which way you can come in. I hate this word because I would have been referred as that in my last role, but you have the gatekeeper person, so the person that sort of holds the door to allowing you in or into the organization, and then you have the key decision maker. And sometimes, very lucky if they're both the same person, but if they're not, then think about really building a relationship with that person that will introduce you to the decision maker. If it's the decision maker because it's the managing director of an organization and he said, yes, I want you to come in, then actually you can just drop the line and say, oh, I spoke to your MD, when can we get going? So, bit more assumptive in that respect. So I think it's really reading between the lines around the relationship with a warmer lead. And a colder one, maybe a bit more formal, a bit more around what your knowledge is of workplace wellness in that sector, or you've seen that they've just opened a new office and you'd love to have a chat, so maybe taking it a little bit more formal.
Yeah, and then you'd keep it, but still kind of very short, quite easy to skim read, but highlighting the benefits for that company, trying to open it up to a chat. And then from a chat, I tend to this is when people start to think about pricing. I tend to say, go in for a chat, have a chat on the phone, and make that really about understanding the organization, what their goals are, what their problems are, and how you can address them. And then don't price. Then say, okay, thank you for sharing this information with me. Let me take some time to create a proposal for you, at which point you can outline what you could offer and the price. So let's jump through a few steps and say, we've had a great meeting. They're prepared for me to put a proposal together. And I think this is where maybe we need to, as yoga teachers, start to think a little bit broader than just, oh, I offer a 60-minute yoga class, and that's about £60. As to actually what could, as you say, a workplace wellness program be that, yes, for us might be centered on, we can teach asana, we can teach meditation, we can teach mindfulness, we can teach breath practices, which all starts to make something sound much more developed than, oh, I'll do a 60-minute yoga class. So what do you think, so that we're moving out of this, oh yeah, that's 60 quid, and actually delivering more in terms of programs?
Yeah. So absolutely. So I think that I was just having a think about this earlier. You know, with your proposal, I would always be minded to ask them what their budget is, and not respond or say that can work or that can't work. Just say, okay, what's your budget? Yeah, I'll have a think. And then I think
I'm just going to come in on that. Sorry, I've got to ask you on that. I agree with that so much, but then so many people just seem to flip it on the small little company and go, oh yeah, well, what would you normally charge? And then this is where yoga teachers just nose bomb into underselling ourselves. So if you're asking for literally that question then and there, and then they flip it on you, any advice?
Yeah, so I would just say it really depends. It really depends on the organization. And then I would leave it quite open and say, oh, you know, I'm speaking to X at the moment. What they're looking for me to do is this. And you can talk about a 1-year program versus actually some, you know, this smaller organization, they want me to come in and do a weekly 30-minute breathwork on a Friday to get everyone geared up for the last day of the week. So as you can see, you know, there's no one size fits all. And I think that would be, I would definitely just give examples of different kinds of things that you have in mind. And then you're also getting them thinking about, oh, right, this isn't just about a lunchtime class.
And I think that's really important when it comes to pricing. So for those of you newer to that, maybe thinking of it like someone going to you, what's the price for car? When you're like, well, you know, I could get you a 50-year-old Mini, or I could get you a Lamborghini. Just maybe that. Okay, so flip the question. That's more about the kind of program you want.
Yeah, consider it. I mean, they've asked you, you know, an open question, how much do you charge, essentially, and flip it. So you're answering, imagine it's a question that enables you to sell yourself. So you could say, you know, if you're looking for one-to-one sessions, you know, that are really tailored, that's something we can do. If you're looking for something that's a group or it's an away day, you know, and you want me to bring props in, you know, you can start kind of creating, thinking with them, sort of creating different ideas that they could get engaged with. The one thing I have noticed, or having spent 15 years working in recruitment, which is essentially selling people, the opportunity to sell relaxation, even as just a yoga teacher, speaking to someone in a corporate organization, you've already relaxed them. Remember that how we present anyway is we're chilled out. I mean, I know we're not behind the scenes, we're like swans, but just even in our presence, you can sense a shift probably in their mood. And if you've already done that just by having essentially a business development call with them, then, you know, you're on the right foot. So really, just bear that in mind. The longer you've got the opportunity to speak to them, the more relaxed they're going to be.
And to lean into that, actually, you know, to lean into your natural skills as a yoga teacher, that really this phone call they're going to be having with you, it's probably going to be very different to every other sales call they've had. Hands down.
And the number of times I've had, I feel so relaxed now after speaking to Shruti. Oh, the team are going to love it. So, you know, it's got nothing to do with price, really.
So don't answer the question. Use it as a chance to explain there's many different ways that you could, and then step back to understanding more about them. Okay. So then let's go into a little bit more of what could a program potentially look like for someone.
And here, you know, again, really actively listening to what they're saying. It might be, you know, and I think often professionals in an organization will be honest, you know, assuming it's, you know, and it is a confidential conversation that you're having. If you're going via the HR department as well, remembering they have different expert teams. So you've got the reward and benefits team who may be looking at employee benefits. So this could come out of that if you were brave enough to pitch an employee benefits package for the long term, where employees are offered your discounted classes as part of all the other benefits they receive. They then have a learning and development team. So within the L&D team, you know, what learning initiatives are they rolling out at the moment? Team leadership, mastering the mind.
Resilience, such a big thing.
Overcoming burnout, stress, topics. So thinking about how you can partner with with them actually. We in my old firms, we'd often have actors come in to play the part in a role play when we were doing management training. You know, interesting to see how the whole world of breathwork is going to continue to grow within organizations. I think McKinsey spent 40 million on taking on Headspace for all their employees around the world. So this is a hot topic. So yeah, topics like self-esteem, confidence, those could be one angle. Burnout. The other angle that I really be keen for people to just think about, because it's so relevant, is diversity and inclusivity and that agenda. And often your diversity and inclusivity experts sit within the HR department as well. So thinking about mental health, you know, physical health, disability. What's the particular type of yoga that you teach? Breath work can be done by anybody, irrelevant of shape, size, you know, any sort of additional needs that are required. So really urge you to think about that agenda. You might see an organization has won an award in that space. You might see
that was the first question I was asked last week in communicating with Natural England about Project Together, and that was the first thing. How will you support our staff which have mobility issues?
Yeah. And you know, as yoga teachers, we are so well trained now on that point. And then I think the final one, and I sort of in terms of drawing out, is really again thinking about, you know, very timely kind of events. So it might be Mental Health Awareness Week, it might be Stoptober, you know, January began, you know, and it's just kind of thinking, okay, when I put my proposal together, how is it relevant to the mood, the season, you know, whatever it might be. And or if it's office based, you know, chair yoga, I know quite a lot of yoga teachers that sort of offer that. So again, bringing it back to the why, that, you know, what's on the company's agenda, what's the people agenda, and creating a program that enables you to do that. Potentially even just to throw it out there, because I'm massively, you know, huge on collaboration. And my first few programs, I wasn't teaching at all. It was my teachers on Yoga Map that all led all the sessions. But maybe even thinking about collaborating. You know, yes, you might be a asana yoga teacher, but actually, do you know a meditation coach? What's the strength in both of you going in on this pitch together?
A nutritionist.
A nutritionist, whatever it might be. So yeah, just thinking a little bit wider than what you could offer could perhaps
occupational therapists be a really useful collaboration as well, I imagine. So just briefly, you said a couple of times about proposal. So we've had our meeting, we've done some fact finding, I've understood more about your needs, then I've bought myself the time to go back to think and to bring together a proposal. When I do a proposal, I like to put in a couple of options. A slightly more pared down budget option and a slightly more tailored, more expensive option, because I think having the choice helps someone choose the more expensive option. They could have chosen the cheaper. And this is the most basic question. A proposal, are you thinking about like an email with an attached beautiful PDF document, or just like a couple of paragraphs in an email?
Yeah, and I think that really depends on you as the teacher and where your skills lie. On Yoga Map's workplace wellness page, we have a downloadable brochure that gives clients an idea. I was going to add that I don't lead with that. If I'm speaking to someone about corporate wellness, it's there. If people find it, great. You know, often I'm the recipient of someone, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's email saying, here's my brochure, and I just delete. So I think
why am I interested?
Yeah, so I think it's making it tailored. That's the key. A couple of thoughts a couple of things to think about as well is really, you know, do you have any terms of engagement? You know, your insurances. It might sound ridiculous, you know, just making sure they're up to date. One of the things that, again, on the procurement side is often organizations will ask me well in advance of instructing me for my company details on a letterhead, so that for invoicing purposes. And some organizations like law firms will do certain conflicts checks or compliance checks on you. So if you are a limited company, the bigger the company, you know, obviously that's helpful. If you're self-employed as well, it's just having your checks and balances in place. So including all of that in the proposal, essentially just make it easy for the person to either make the decision or pass it on to the decision maker to make. And I think in the proposal, show that you've listened. So, you know, always say, you know, and you might have a little covering email, really great to speak to you. You know, we discussed XYZ, burnout, you know, physical health, and making our classes inclusive. Here are the two proposed options I've given you. That could be PDF, it could be email. I think always nice, include a logo, you know, make it visually appealing if you can. I you know, that drives me, so I like it. But I think ultimately, if you, you know, maybe even if you have, some teachers are on YouTube, or you have, if you want to say, you know, if you'd like to share this with the team, here's a 10-minute free YouTube video that I created. I think adding testimonials at the bottom, or certainly link to your website. These are a couple of things that a couple of other people have said. So just making it really rich with, you know, giving them everything they need so they can't say no.
Yeah, and being prepared, I think, also to work within, especially if you're in a big company, to work within their procedures. I have definitely had a conversation with newer teachers who are like, oh, but I told that massive organization that my payment terms were 7 days. I'm like, they don't care what your payment terms are. If they do a 90-day run, you're going in on the 90-day run. Like, just understanding what you're coming into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So let's take a hard steer to LinkedIn. For those of us, like, you know, when I was in recruitment, which was 12 years ago, LinkedIn was only really just sort of beginning. So even then in LinkedIn, we weren't massively using it. So for those, and you know, that means I'm not on it. For those of us that have like linked what? Do you think LinkedIn is worthwhile if you don't have a profile, or do you think LinkedIn is worthwhile for people like, I know Louise Kane, who's watching this, who already has an established network on it? And LinkedIn's like Facebook for business, right?
Yeah, ultimately, and having been a recruiter, using it and not using it pre-LinkedIn days, it was picking up the phone. LinkedIn, I would say, is an excellent place to connect with like-minded professionals, but you can ultimately get a job through LinkedIn. I mean, I say that I've also been offered jobs through Instagram, but LinkedIn really enables you to showcase your CV, your professional biography. So I think you're absolutely right. If you already have a bit of a profile and a presence, you're one step ahead. If you don't, I think, why not create one? It's a much more static space on one hand. Even if you've just got your CV on there, I would say, I don't have a stat to hand, but I would be minded to think that many yoga teachers watching this will have had a previous career of some sort. It's surprising how many connections you make. The vibe of LinkedIn is quite different to Facebook. That's probably how I would summarize answering that question, Laura. It's a lot more professional. There's no issue in reaching out to someone that you don't know. I get loads of connection requests every day. I generally accept ones that look kind of relevant to me. There was a time where I wouldn't accept requests. You can just play around with it. But I think the biggest thing, the shift I've seen in the last couple of years, I would say since lockdown, is it's become a lot more personal. Employees and employers are sharing a lot more around physical, sort of mental health awareness, physical health awareness. A lot of people are crossing the line between work and home life. It's really great to see people championing, certain causes because they lost a loved one during COVID, and typically that wouldn't have been shared on LinkedIn, I would say. So it's a really interesting place, to my mind. It's a really interesting place to make connections, to build a corporate business, irrespective of which.
So in the essence of it, it's basically like your CV, but you make connections, but obviously you can also post articles, blogs, videos there as well. And I think from my understanding, I was someone that was in my mentorship a year ago, and he did stormingly through LinkedIn for his lunchtime sessions. But he shared videos on there, but very differently. He targeted it. So the videos we did of him introducing the benefits of yoga to his business networks that didn't really know him in that way. He did a video, but he got his suit on. He had a nice watch on. Or I think it's just a shirt and tie, maybe not a suit. But it was clearly like workwear. He was like, hi, my name's, you might not know, aside from my day job, I'm also a yoga teacher. And then the video cut to him sitting on his yoga mat,
Yeah.
showed a couple of stretches, then it cut back to him sat in the desk. It's
Yeah.
very much kind of walking that path of professional you and yoga you, and the benefits. Like it's the delivery is a little different.
Yeah, and I think that's what's changed about LinkedIn. It's merged, and therefore the space now for wellness experts to be on LinkedIn, I think it's a really good time. Ultimately, it's your professional shop window. Instagram, as we all know, is a different kettle of fish, really. You know, and I think the other really interesting thing about LinkedIn is that people find you on there and they actively make connections with you, and you know, so the sorts of things you might look to promote on LinkedIn might be at that more strategic level. So we talked about the why of an organization. So actually thinking about becoming a bit of a thought leadership in the space you're in. So if you are a breathwork coach, you know, sharing why Wim Hof, for example, breathing is, and the ice work that he does is great for someone building resilience in the workplace. That's wouldn't necessarily constantly refer to yoga and mindfulness in the context of the workplace on other social channels, and LinkedIn enables you to do that. And people, you know, I've had so many people and opportunities reach out because of what people are seeing on LinkedIn. And again, it's like any other social media channel. The people that are on LinkedIn, my contacts that are on LinkedIn, a large majority of them aren't on Instagram. So I can post what I like on Instagram, they're not going to see me. And actually going back to my target audience, they are on LinkedIn. Busy, professional, you know, mostly women working in, you know, high profile roles, again, suffering from burnout. So that's where they're going to find me. And I should add, you know, having a company, so Yoga Map, we have a company page which you can set up. It's free. You can create your own, if you have your own sort of wellness brand. And then as a yoga teacher, you have your own profile as a person. So that's like Facebook. So you have the two. Yes. And it could be the same content, but again, that then helps with increasing your, I would say, your brand awareness if you're looking a little bit bigger in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, it's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but you did say something that's quite important to me there about being a thought leader. And I always think of this as like conviction marketing. And I think it's something yoga teachers, we don't naturally do, you know, and like, you've been practicing yoga a long time. You know, I've been practicing yoga for 20 years, teaching for 12. Yet we can still just go, oh, it's just little me. It's just little me. No, I have an opinion based on 20 years of experience in my industry. It is okay for us to position ourselves as thought leaders and to have conviction and that elevates our professionalism to not downplay our knowledge all the time. And this is why yoga teachers are so underpaid, because, you know, we're always downplaying what we do. Downplaying our knowledge. And can we circle back on that then to pricing?
Yes.
How do we, I am the worst at pricing, okay? I tend to, again, it's a recruitment thing, tell people to think about their like, intend, and must. You know, I would really like to have £200 per hour for a class, corporate class. I intend to maybe settle at 125. Must, if I really want it, it's really close by, maybe I'll do it for £65. You know, individually dependent on you, your situation, that company. Those numbers were just plucked from nowhere. So please don't think I've just told you what to price your corporate classes at. But any advice on just opening our eyes to why we shouldn't be charging £40 an hour for a corporate yoga class?
Yeah. So I think, and there are two angles, aren't there? There is the one, and I've seen it myself when I've worked in the corporate world, you know, yoga teachers that are happy to accept a per person model, which you haven't referenced at all there, Laura, which is great. But
yes, I don't like that model.
I would steer clear from saying, okay, yes, there's a lot. If I've got the gig on a Friday, you know, it's having an abundant mindset rather than you know, the opposite. Okay, I saw it in one of the places I worked, where a teacher would come every Friday, and there were literally just 2 hard and fast members of the team that would do the class, and that was it, of an organization that had thousands of people. So I would steer away from that. I would spend time in really thinking about, well, how long, like you would as a management consultant, I suppose. It's your charge, going back to your charge out rate. Yes, it might cost you might be happy to take 40, 50 pounds for an hour of your time teaching that particular group of people. But then actually, if you're teaching 10 people, and that means they're getting it for a fiver, and actually the employer's paying. So that's another point I would be keen to sort of emphasize. I think nowadays, most organizations have a budget for wellness. So I wouldn't be putting it on the employee. Yeah. I think we've moved on from that. So I think, not per person, not employee. Therefore, knowing that the organization will have a certain budget, knowing that there's a commitment there. And then looking at your time to organize, even writing the proposal, you spent an hour meeting them, you are probably going to have another follow-up call. You're probably going to have to revise your proposal. I wouldn't consider that the first proposal you write is the last one. So consider maybe 3 iterations of that. And then planning your classes every week. This needs to be absolutely spot on. And then thinking about, where does that serve me? So if it's £40 an hour, well, actually, it all adds up. So ultimately, I mean, from what I hear, and I'm on a lot of teacher forums, and I know, as you say, it's a hot topic. Anything from yes, on one hand, a one-off. I think there was occasions where we do, for say £50, you could do 75, 100, 150. I think if someone's going to consider instructing you, as it were, pardon the pun, for a 6-week program, then you could say, okay, how does that sit with my other earnings that I have at the moment, and am I happy to do it for a bit of a discount? So I think it's just really thinking a bit more commercially about what you do, from more of an abundant mindset, and knowing that this is the price I'm going to set. And actually, if I say £150 and the client goes, okay, it's £150, that's it for the session. Yeah. And then turning it back into a sales, selling it, say, well, if it's £150, whether you have 10 employees or 15, it doesn't matter, it's £150.
Yeah. And I work both ways on that. I completely agree with you. And that's some of the corporates that didn't work for me. We're like, oh, well, we're giving you the space, so if you could just charge the employees £5, and then the stuff just didn't work. But equally, I see teachers flip it the other way and say, oh, well, I've quoted them £150, but now they want to put 40 people in there. I'm like, it's the same amount of work for you, whether there's 10 people in the room or there's 40 people in the room. What is your time and that program works both ways, I think.
Yeah. And going back to your why, so for me, one of the aspects around working, with workplaces, as well as having the booking platform, as well as running retreats, is that it's a really nice ecosystem of knowing that someone in my corporate space will join me on a retreat, which I was very blessed to have, in the last couple of weeks. So it's a kind of thinking a little bit long term. I think to think, oh, well, there's 40 students and I only got 150 quid. I kind of think, well, brilliant. That's 35 more times for you to capitalize on seeing those students again in some capacity.
Yeah.
So,
and it's really facilitated you, because of the level at which you're going in at the corporate and the level at which the clients are there. I mean, your retreat just looked amazing. You were able to run a retreat in a beautiful location in an outstanding built property, because actually you had client bases that could afford that and wanted to spend that dedicated time in luxury, in a juicing retreat, nurturing themselves with you. So really, they have become a part of your broader client base, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would always say, just thinking long term is the way to go on the corporate side, and thinking, how could this opportunity evolve? Where could it lead? Because I think that's really the key, when you get stuck thinking, oh, but 45, 50, 55 pounds, but actually what's the opportunity here? What door is it opening for me?
Yeah, there was a friend of mine who ran a corporate class for a company, and they whisked her off to France every year on their corporate retreats just to teach a 1-hour yoga class every morning, and the rest of the time she was on holiday.
Amazing.
It was
Amazing.
perfect.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, we could go into all of these topics so much more. But I want to give some chance just to mention the workplace wellness program and yoga map as well. Before you do that, was there anything else that you had noted down that you wanted to make sure we covered today?
Yeah, so I just think, sorry, just to head back to LinkedIn for literally a couple of minutes,
Yeah.
I think it's worth definitely bearing in mind, you know, how you can get noticed on LinkedIn. Just as an example, I thought I'd share anecdotally, I was looking through my feed, and it really my feed is all about the topics we've discussed today, picking up on particular, you know, reports by McKinsey or Gartner about, you know, so sort of bringing people to content that they might not have seen that is relevant to my business. Off the back of, I think, one of the first couple of posts about launching Yoga Map, so that would have been kind of August, September, 2020, I had a couple of connections in the legal recruitment space that reached out, and off the back of that I was invited to do a kind of video interview for a particular website. I then, off the back of that, I did a podcast with an Australian lady who's in the sort of yoga marketing space. I then got invited to be a guest kind of writer for another newsletter for another recruitment business. And then, you know, for example, the retreat that we ran was in Coast magazine, which again, for our corporate clients, you know, being able to post that on LinkedIn gave it the credibility it needed, so that people were happy to join, you know, to join. So I think it's just, yeah, making everything very professional in a sector which perhaps has gone under the radar for so long.
Yeah.
And not being afraid, you know, not being afraid to shout about all those things. So I just wanted
that was such a wonderful dot of connections.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, I think that really, you know, it feels a lot clearer to do that on LinkedIn. So that was just wanted to plug. But no, that was I'm a fan.
Yes. So anything else? Any other points as well? Just try, I think, would be my last point. Try.
Yeah, give it a go, and always think about, you know, the 1 in 10 rule. And if, you know,
follow up
spreadsheet and follow up, and then, you know, politely, okay, no, thank you, you know, if that changes, let me know. And that's really, yeah, that's really the rule. And don't be disheartened if people say no. Yeah,
and I think the thing with follow up is remembering why people need follow up, because I think people are worried about being a pain. Whereas I notice in my behavior, and you're probably quite similar, if someone sends me something really interesting, like you've sent me something really interesting on Yoga Map, I'm like, that's interesting. I'll come back to that when I've got time.
Yeah.
And you don't come back to it. This is why we have to do the follow-up, just to bring it back. Yes, I was going to look into that, wasn't I? And someone's much more likely to do it on that second or even third follow-up.
Absolutely. And I think it's, you know, bearing in mind what's in it for them ultimately. That's really important. That, you know, and it can be a two-way collaboration. So yeah.
So then on to workplace wellness programs, because I think you're looking for some teachers to work with you. Is that correct?
Yes, would love to. So we've had on Yoga Map, we've got about 20 teachers at the moment, and have a few proposals out actually with some wonderful clients in the sort of professional services space to run workplace wellness initiatives, whether it's something that is part of, as I said, Mental Health Awareness Week, or it's more of a year-long program, tying in different types of wellness experts, from yoga teachers, meditation, breath work, to nutritionists, whatever it might be. So yeah, if you are a little bit worried about doing it on your own, please do reach out, because I think collaboration is a really wonderful thing. And yeah, I guess, you know, you can still cut me in half and you'll see a recruiter. So I think I'm always joining, connecting people, and I think, you know, a lot of it is about the personality that we bring when we go, you know, when we go to corporate organizations. So yeah, it would be great to chat to anyone if they were a little nervous to head out themselves, or equally would just like to partner a little bit more closely with me.
Yeah, I know she's watching, but you must have a phone call with Louise Kane. Very similar. Yes, make that happen, please, Louisa. And before we sign off and say thank you to Shruti, one thing I've just noticed, which again might not stand out for some of you, look at how Shruti's dressed. No comparison to me. Look at how Shruti's dressed. She's clearly dressed in a business wear. I don't know what's on the bottom half.
Oh, it's a dress, but wasn't the case yesterday, I can assure you.
So that if you are talking to somebody in a professional setting, meet them in that setting. It doesn't mean you have to put a suit and a tie on, but meet them as a wellness professional. Meet them as a professional. Would you say?
I would, and actually, I did toy with whether or not to bring that up, because I think that is a personal thing. And I know when I've met yoga teachers on the other side, and I've been inviting them into work within a workplace, actually having them come in with yoga leggings and their mat. That is business attire. But I think this day and age, probably everything is done by a Zoom or a phone call. I think it's just knowing I hate to say it in a way, but the sort of social etiquette of, even on an email, kind regards. Typos are my one bugbear. I know we're not all perfect, but just really rereading the email that you send, just making sure it's perfect. I think, having worked in the legal industry for so long, so much can be perceived about, kind regards, or just being really polite and professional. And that will then lead on, when you are running a class, to be there, and I'm sure we talk about that a lot, the sort of timeliness of arriving, and just having everything, organized. I think that's really important.
No, I agree. Professional and friendly. Professional and friendly. So thank you so much for your time. Shruti and I are going to hang out in the comments, but I know so many of you watch us on replay. So if you've got any questions, any comments later, please put them in, and one of us will make a point to come back to you on that. And please, Shruti means it. Get in touch. Get in touch with her if you would like to collaborate on workplace wellness programs. And Shruti, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
You're welcome, Laura. It's great to chat. I wish everyone lots of success.
Thank you for watching, my loves. Right. See you next time. We've got Gary Carter. I know that's like saying Madonna. We've got Gary Carter, and we're talking about all things fascia and his work with Body Worlds. Next week is going to be, I'm excited. Come geek out on anatomy.
Love that.
Thank you, Shruti.
Thanks a lot, Laura.
Bye.
Bye.